NBC's Jay Gray and editor and publisher of the Kerr County Lead, Louis Amestoy, are both live in Kerrville, Texas. I'm also joined by Michael Mann, director of the Penn Center for Science, Sustainability, and the Media. Thank you all for being here. Jay, Kerrville, of course, the hardest hit. What is the situation on the ground today?
Yeah. Well, it's the sixth day, Chris, as you well know, of the search, the rescue, recovery here. And I've got to tell you, we've been hearing from officials for days that there were dozens missing, that there were, I'm quoting them here, a lot of people missing. The revelation from the governor yesterday that just here in Kerr County, 161 are missing was a gut punch to so many who are struggling right now. Those teams are out, though. They're working. You see behind us, there's someone right here that is going through some of the debris along the river right now. And you see these individuals looking. You see teams coming out. We know that they've added more resources to this search. 4 Black Hawk helicopters moving in yesterday from Arkansas, more drones to look and see in places where people can't get to at this point. They're going to start pulling away some of this larger debris and trying to make sure that no one's trapped underneath pockets like this. And they're also telling people who live in the area, whose homes have been damaged, who have this type of debris in their yards, don't move anything. We don't want you to move anything. There's a burn ban here. You know, we're out in a rural part of Texas. They burn things a lot of times when they have these huge catastrophes like this. But they're saying there may be somebody trapped there, and so we don't want to take that chance. Call us. We will come out and look at this before you move anything. So it's a very active investigation here, a recovery, if you will. They are still holding out hope that perhaps they'll find someone alive, though even the men on the ground here will tell you that they are losing that hope as this gets longer. One other quick note, Chris. I talked to a couple of first responders last night who have been on the ground and who have been working here since the flood. One tells me, I'm not surprised at the governor's numbers yesterday. I've been out in this and I see it. Another one telling me he thinks that number's low, that 161 here in Kerr County is low. He thinks there'll be more.
Jay Gray, I appreciate your reporting all week long. Louis, it is obviously not just Governor Abbott. We all saw this moment at yesterday's presser that I want to remind folks of.
The community here is asking these questions. What happened? When did it happen? Was the emergency manager awake at the time? Did they push the button to issue an emergency alert?
Sir, it's not that easy when you just push a button, okay? There's a lot more to that. And we've told you several times.
Did it happen, sir?
I can't tell you at this time, okay?
I've watched, Louis, from afar, the range of emotions. I've watched the grieving. I've watched the searching. I've watched the questioning, all of them completely understandable in an unfathomable situation. Tell us what you're seeing and hearing and how the community is responding to what is really legitimate questions at a time when people want to focus maybe on other things.
Well, I mean, I got to tell you that I don't subscribe to the code red thing myself because I don't know. I mean, it's an opt-in deal, right? It's not like an Amber Alert, and even an Amber Alert you can opt out of. My question has been from the start. I got my first National Weather Service alert on my phone at 7:17 a.m. I finally went through my messages yesterday and I found that alert. And you know, I actually confronted some people today about this reporting. You know, like, well, wait a minute here. You know, code red is kind of an opt-in thing. This is why was the National Weather Service not pinging us repeatedly once that first severe storm warning or a thunderstorm warning came out at 1 o'clock in the morning? Because remember, at midnight our time, we had just a flash flood watch or a flood watch. We didn't have a flash flood warning. We had a flood watch. So it was very early in the morning. And I am actually crowdsourcing this now because some folks said, you know, oh, we've got proof that it was at 115, 116, and certainly the National Weather Service can ping within. They can geo-target within a you know, a very. Sorry, it's very humid here, so my camera's going bad. But at 115. why wasn't it county-wide, right? Why weren't they pinging everybody in the county saying, this is an emergency? Because then you can have a situation where you have a phone game there where everyone's like calling everybody. You can still call people and Hunt and elsewhere. I'm curious about why that wasn't the case, really, more than the county's response. And I think that in the press conference today, you saw a real strong pushback too, because one of the things that people forget about is in 1987, they had a flood here that killed some kids in a bus. They were trying to evacuate. And they made a very good point. They let Sergeant Jonathan Lamb get up today from the Kerrville Police Department, who's grown up here, lived here his entire life, a veteran. And he just said, look, there's numerous water crossings. You had every creek, and not only that, you have to cross the other side of the river, the North Fork of the river, which is also being inundated. There's some questions that are going to have to be answered by Governor Abbott. Allow these buildings to go into these floodways, not just floodplains. They're in the floodway, and FEMA. There's documentation from FEMA about this, allowing some of this to happen. But remember, here in Texas, we don't want to be told how to develop our land. And so you're going to have a real fight here about what's good for, it's the same thing in California, right? When you have an urban, when you have these fires that go and burn up places where basically people shouldn't live because they're living on top of a chimney. Same kind of concept. So do we want to prevent people from living in the hill country, or are we going to focus on these alerts? I don't know that you could have gotten anybody out when that thing was stuck where it was geographically, or and the geology of the hill country. I think we're asking the wrong questions here right now. I think what we're going to have to do is figure out the recovery.
And those questions are going to need to be, Michael, based on science, right? In the last week, we've ticked off, we did this at the top of the show, at least 4 mass flooding events that our climate unit here describe as 1,000-year flood events. So when you look at that and the very smart questions that were just raised by Lewis, tell us what is going on here. What does the science tell us about what the future holds?
Yeah, there's no question that climate change is an exacerbating factor here. Yes, there are a whole bunch of things that came together, but climate change has made these events worse. It's made them more deadly. And at some level, it's actually really simple. It's simple physics that tells us you warm up the planet, you warm up the oceans 2 degrees Fahrenheit, which is what they've warmed up so far. You put about 7% more moisture in the atmosphere. So when you get rainfall, you get that much more rainfall. But that's just part of it. It turns out the increase can be much greater than that, not just 7%, but 20, 30%, because of the fact that you get more powerful storms that entrain more moisture into the air. And so there's that factor alone. And then on top of that, these weather systems are increasingly likely to become stalled. They just sit in the same location day after day. Our own research suggests that too is a pattern that is being favored by human-caused warming. And so you put it all together, you get these extreme flooding events, and even worse, we're seeing extremes on both sides of the spectrum. So one summer, extremely dry, drought, wildfires. The next summer, huge amounts of rainfall. And then you get these compound events where, for example, because the ground is so parched, it can't absorb the water that's coming down, and so it funnels more water into these rivers, and you get worse flooding. A whole bunch of things that came together, climate change playing a role in each one of those.